or an EL in your name for some reason. I don't know why.
You're not alone.
Okay. I don't feel like it should be 2 syllables. I feel like you need another syllable in there.
Probably.
Okay. Let me just check on the page and see if we are appearing for people. If you are tuning in right now, can you give us a like or say hi or something so that we know that you are here? Okay, it is showing on the page. I hope the people can hear us. Oh, yep, we have about 10 watchers so far. Good. Okay, we are in day 55 of quarantine. If you want to stop in and say hi, tell us where you're from. Jamie and I are both from Pennsylvania, but we're not going to talk about too much legal or regulatory special ed stuff today. We're going to talk more about the curriculum isn't the word I want to use.
OT.
OT, but I mean practices, more about like activities and practices. Good. Okay, let's go ahead and get started because we have been running over on some of these. So as long as I have Jamie here now, don't want to waste her time, get her as much time as she wants to chat with all of you and for you to ask her questions. Jamie's a friend of mine. Right now, it feels like she's so far away, but she's really only about 20 miles away from me. But of course, neither of us have really been out of our homes in a long time.
Except for Wegmans, you know.
Oh, you still? I just went there for the first time on Saturday because I had to go up to Downingtown and pick up some PT stuff from my. People were still crazy there. I'm like, really, the Wegmans customer cannot take a break for the pandemic. They still have to act. And
it's one of the best places, which is the sad part. Like I go there because it's better than some of the other supermarkets, but you're still like moving.
They were limiting how many people go in. I've actually been using ShopRite Delivery, and I've been using them for years, so it was no big deal to switch over. Oh, somebody said Aloha. That means
Aloha.
Is it 6 a.m. there? 6 a.m. 8 a.m. 8 a.m. there. I think it's a 6-hour difference. Or no, 8 p.m. No, 8 a.m. I don't know.
I don't know. I can't do my
I don't do time zone
math either.
So I'll just say aloha back because I don't do time zones.
Aloha back.
All right, Jamie, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Okay. So my name is Jamie Bassman, and I am an occupational therapist. I was realizing just yesterday I'd gotten my graduate school like alumni, thing in the mail, they put out every quarter or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, I was there 20 years ago. So I've been an OT for like almost 20 years. I work in infant toddler early intervention, so in the birth to 3 system in Pennsylvania. But I have also worked for many years in the preschool and in school-based settings, including an approved private school for kids with emotional behavior disorders. I've worked in autism classrooms using verbal behavior approaches and kind of done a little bit of everything. But this month has really been my first, I guess it's been the last 6 weeks has been my first experience ever with teletherapy myself. So there's just a big learning curve for everyone.
Yeah, there is. Well, thank you for being with us. A couple reasons why, wanted to have you on. First, of course, because I like you and know you, and I know that you have. I know that you have knowledge to share with the audience, but also we hadn't really spoken with anyone yet about 0 to 3, so maybe we can touch on that for a little bit. And for the moms and dads who are tuning in right now, if you're thinking that you're going to leave here today and that Jamie's going to have this like whole giant list of things for you to do not worry. We're not doing that. We wanted to focus today on using your home and natural environment to practice the skills, which the 0 to 3 folks are excellent at. Because Jamie and I are both in the same boat in that we have kids who are also distance learning, who we have to work with on a daily basis. And we understand that you don't want another list of activities to do. That you'd rather just try to fit it into your natural day. And that's one of the things I miss is that constant reminding that when the 0 to 3 folks were in my house all the time, when Kevin was a baby, that you're just constantly reminded of that. And if there's any bright spot to, not having school and kids being home. It's that I do get to see his therapists now, weekly, which, I usually only see them, a couple times a year. So, okay. So
that's very different. Yeah.
let's just touch on it briefly. Again, Jamie and I are both from Pennsylvania, so your state may be a little bit different. But do you want to just touch on, for the parent in Pennsylvania who maybe hasn't heard from their providers yet, what is 0 to 3 doing as far as distance learning or as far as the pandemic, if they have an IFSP and all that fun stuff?
Sure. So actually the 0 to 3 system in Pennsylvania was literally one of the first to get up and running with teletherapy because of the way that the system is set up. The money comes down, federal to state to county. And so it's really about that, department in the state of Pennsylvania starting to make those guidelines and also realizing, and this was actually something I wasn't even aware of as an occupational therapist ever. As it turns out, the state of Pennsylvania has no rules or regulations already in place for teletherapy. So I was like, oh, wow, we're good to go. Okay. Which was useful to know, not necessarily the case in other states and not necessarily the case in other practice areas for occupational therapy. But for us, that was the case. So I work in 3 different counties, and it was like each county was like kind of like one by one by one. They're like, okay, we're closing down, we're going to get this teletherapy thing started, just wait for your guidelines. One thing that was really helpful was to find out that from the Department of Health and Human Services, and this is like a national thing, that they waived the requirement that teletherapy services be provided through a HIPAA compliant
Provide, like, I know what you're saying.
yeah,
Software,
like a HIPAA,
I guess
right,
software.
right. So basically that meant I didn't need to spend $200 a month on healthcare for Zoom, and that instead what I could do was offer up to the family, basically, because of this emergency order. We want to make sure that everyone has access to teletherapy. So whether it's via Zoom, whether it's via FaceTime, which is what a lot of my families have chosen to do, you know, I've now done sessions with like WhatsApp, and I get to learn about all these things. But whatever it is, and if a family doesn't have access to video, then doing phone calls are also a possibility. I will say it's been a little slow going in terms of referrals because a lot of families are still not aware that this is an option and not aware that virtual evaluations are also happening. So that's an important thing to make sure that people know, that if you do have a child and you have concerns about them, they're not in the early intervention system, that you can call, get an intake, and what happens is you will get evaluated, but it will be virtual. And that will not stop you from getting services.
Oh, okay.
So
That's
that's a really important thing to know.
That is. Okay. So if a parent, okay, I know that I've read, because the questions that I'm answering most frequently for whatever reason seem to be about speech. I would say OT is definitely second. So I've read everything that I've read pretty much everything that ASHA has put out regarding their expectations for speech pathologists, speech therapists, and what they should do for teleservices. What is your governing body? And that's not the right word. What is your
AOTA?
What is it?
Would be the AOTA would be the equivalent of ASHA.
Okay.
That's for the national, the national organization.
Okay. And I'm only mentioning that because I've had some parents come back and say, well, my school said that they can't provide it because, and I'm like, well, that's not really, you may want to read what ASHA has said, because ASHA has said that their speech pathologists can do this, provided you follow their rules. So you may want to look at AOTA if you're getting pushback from your school on that.
Oh, right. I mean, there shouldn't be any that isn't really related to what the state has laid out. It's really about not even what AOTA is saying, but what AOTA is saying is it all depends on what your state guidelines are for the provision of teletherapy. And so, if you live in Montana, and this is like literally what's linked up on the AOTA website, you're going to want to know if your therapist is a licensed provider, what they can or can't do. But there have definitely been a ton of webinars for therapists on best practices. At this stage, there should not, if you're talking about early intervention, preschool or school based, if people are not somehow being like moving forward with the therapy services at this point, I would have to wonder what's going on, because it wouldn't be based on anything that the national organization is putting, and probably not based on the licensure either. It's probably more logistical. A lot of occupational therapists are contractors, and so the school district has to work that out with the contracting agency. How does payment work? What how are services being delivered? But there shouldn't be an issue with it.
Okay. That's good. And it's, this has been changing on a daily basis. So I think it is just taking them longer to catch up. And what they're saying now may have been true 2 weeks ago. It just, is not true. When it first started, everyone was like, Zoom, you can't go on Zoom because it's not HIPAA compliant. And then it's like, no, it's slow down, everybody, and kind of regroup and get the information. That's a great point, though, about them being contractors, which I think probably a lot of parents don't know or don't understand, is that they are not school district employees. And many times a school district, they may contract with a person specifically, but more likely an agency as a whole. So it's not so easy as to say, okay, go ahead and do this. They do have to work out details first.
Right.
So, okay. All right. So let's see. What else do we want to get into? I'm just looking at our list. So, all right, let's get into then the OT stuff. For those of us who have kids with OT needs, I don't know if you want to get into fine motor first or sensory. What I liked a lot when you first started was the piece about, when you go into a home, when you can, that you don't take a bag with you. And that you don't carry a whole bunch of stuff in with you. So, we can go over some things that parents can do with things that you probably already have in your house to work in skills that, that your kids need to work on.
So I think the first thing I would say to people is, when you're looking at your child's OT goals, try to really focus on, given the circumstances, given your family's current life circumstances, given the priorities and what's going to make the most sense in the near future, decide really what are you going to prioritize right now? Because it might not be everything, it might not be all of the goals. And try to find something where you feel like, this is something my child can work on given the circumstances, and it's going to go well for us. You can also, I would encourage people to talk to the OT. I was saying to you, Lisa, before, about how I think that a lot of parents, because we're busy, and it feels like it's kind of like a constant like back and forth with the district, don't always proactively take advantage of asking the therapist or checking in with them or partnering with them proactively the way that maybe they did during those infant, toddler, early intervention years, when the therapist was coming into the home and it was really that relationship was there. But especially right now, if you feel like you're at a loss, kind of asking that therapist, okay, so what is it about my child's handwriting that maybe we need to focus on more? Is it an issue with size, or is it an issue with spacing, or, and then maybe is there one thing, that I can kind of do at home that might help them with that spacing thing? And then that frees you up to integrate some more ideas that kind of go outside of the therapy session and into the home, once you kind of know a little more about what you're targeting. The other thing I would say is to think about you know, your daily routines. This is where early intervention really focuses. It's really about the natural environment and integrating therapy, quote unquote, into naturally occurring routines. And I think you also want it to be something that's meaningful for the child. Um, if it's something that the child is, it feels like it's a constant struggle right now, it could be because it doesn't feel like there's a lot of inherent meaning in it for the child right now. And I'm going to use handwriting as an example, just because for a lot of kids right now, working on handwriting as a school based goal must feel a little weird when they're doing all of their schoolwork on a computer. So, thinking about, again, meaning and what's going to be the thing that they're going to really prioritize. And it's going to be okay if some of those other goals are not your main focus. But your therapist is a resource that can help you. So like reach out.
Yeah. And I think that's really consistent with the behaviorists I've spoken with, and every person or professional that we've had on has said you have to prioritize.
Yeah.
And I know that some parents are still working outside the home right now because you're essential workers,
Right.
and many of you are working inside the home, and you're expected to work side by side in some capacity, in guiding your child, but also you performing your job so that your family can eat. So you just have to do just keep in mind that just do the best you can and give yourself a break. And again, the behaviorists have said it, everybody said it, that you have to prioritize, and that all kids are going to regress. It's just kind of, I think, accepting that okay, my child is going to regress, but what can what's really important to me to maintain. And I know the one BCABA I spoke with said, not even trying to learn anything right now, just trying to maintain the skill sets that they have.
I think the other interesting thing about this setup, and I know this, as a parent, I have two kids who themselves have IEPs, that this also provides a little bit of a window into how your child self-regulates as they try to focus on their schoolwork or complete their schoolwork. And that can be helpful, I think, in terms of their ability to come up with their own strategies. My daughter was interesting. She is 12, and she had said that, for her, listening to music, has always been an alerting thing, because we all, no matter how old we are or what our, whether we have, a diagnosis or not, every human being has their own kind of sensory experiences, their own sensory quirks, their own issues, their own way of learning best. And that's the same thing for our kids. And the question is just, can they communicate what their sensory needs are? And so the funny thing about it is that all of a sudden in the home, you're not necessarily tethered to, okay, you need to sit in a desk and a chair all day if that is not what works best for you. With both of my kids, the goal was not about sitting at the desk. The goal was, how are you going to maintain your focus so that you can complete your work? And I think when you look at it through that lens, it allows you to say, all right, you know what? If what my kid needs is to, sit on a beanbag chair, or to, jump up and down, in between lessons and Zoom calls, or, they need those extra fidget toys, fill in the blank. But it's a good opportunity and a learning opportunity for your child and you to have a conversation about their sensory needs, and for them to start seeing, that they can be empowered to, kind of be their own therapist, so to speak.
I think my son is enjoying the freedom, but he is now starting to understand that there's a certain amount of responsibility that comes with that.
It's a balance, and
And
it's not every
yeah.
kid.
And
Yes.
and if you want the privacy of your own room to do this with a laptop, then, if you don't want to sit at the kitchen table, then you're going to have to actually do your work. Um,
Yeah.
and he's been,
That's the key part of the equation,
yeah,
right? Yeah. That's the key part of the equation. I think the other opportunity that this has opened is, and I hear this from a lot of parents, and you might be seeing it too, is wow, now we actually have some more time and space for the life skills to become more of a focus, whereas before it was like, I just don't have the time or the inclination to work with my child on becoming more independent
right.
with like around the house skills, because
Mm,
time is a problem.
right.
But I think what I want parents to understand is how much you can work on motor planning and processing and all of those sort of OT things through some of those everyday activities, and have your child actually help you and help themselves around the house. So, kind of the
Okay, before we get to the specifics of that, which we will in a second, Casey has said that's been her biggest struggle is working and trying to work with your kiddo. And um, yeah, I hear you. I mean, right now it's May. So if there is I know if there was an IEP season, April and May would definitely be it. And now is the time of year when I would literally be attending at least 2 IEP meetings a day. Um, that's not happening, obviously. So for better, for worse, because I'm self-employed, my business isn't doing so great, but that's freed up some time for me. For those of you who haven't had that time freed up because you're working with, you're working for someone, for an employer who has expectations, I would say then go with, the school or the therapist. And I have had to do that because I do have some work commitments, and I've just had to say, hey, on Mondays, I just can't do this. And that's it, to the school. And I think, I think for as much conflict as we have with schools, I think right now many are being very understanding, when and the feedback that they're getting from parents as far as, hey, I just can't do this.
yeah.
So, all right. So if you want to ask Jamie a question, go ahead and type it in and we will try to get to it. But other than that, let's move on to some specifics as far as working with your kids at home. So what are some ways that I could get more practice in, maybe? Because you know what? I am so guilty of, I'm getting better because of the pandemic and we're not on the tight schedule that we're usually on, but I'm a doer. It's like, just let me do it. Just let me do it. And I do a lot of care for my son, because he does lack a lot of skills, but also because it takes him a very long time. And I'm like, okay, let's go. The bus is going to be here. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Um, so we've been getting better at that. But what are some other things parents can do to, get this stuff done just in the normal course of a day?
Right. So I think first of all, every family has a different routine, right? And so, as an early intervention therapist, I'm very used to the, kind of going in and like, tell me about your daily routine. Like, what does it look like? Kind of like, what do you do in the morning? What does your afternoon look like? And it really is, everyone has kind of like the basics, but it's different for everyone. So I think what I would ask people to do is like literally, I know it sounds like a silly idea, but like literally like kind of write down what the rhythms of your day look like now. And think about, in terms of those different things that you're doing. Um think about which of those kind of like chore type things you might be more willing to spend the extra 5 minutes on slowly kind of guiding and coaching your child through it using more indirect language and indirect prompting, which is going to actually allow them the time to really think and process. And also think about which activities and chores are not going to work that way. So, I think the other factor is to think about which activities are your child is going you're going to be able to, in OT language we think about grading the activity, so that they can be successful, like slightly challenged yet successful at it. So like for example, it could be that, using a vacuum cleaner is not going to be the activity because maybe A, for your child, that's just going to be a little too challenging. They're not going to kind of understand or know what to do with it. And B, maybe the sound, from a sensory standpoint, it's not going to work out. But it could be that you could work with them on learning how to use a broom, and maybe you're using the dustpan. And when you're doing that, you're actually doing an activity together. And, it's not the most exciting activity in the world, obviously, but it's like they have to learn to coordinate their body and their movements to work with another person. And there's a lot of motor planning in that.
Yeah.
So, again, I think about the days or the time of day where it might work, and then the times of days where it's just not going to work for you, and go from there. The other thing, it's like I always tell parents when it comes to, like, for example, practicing dressing, sometimes it's better to practice dressing when you're putting on your pajamas, because you're just going to have a lot more time. For most families, to kind of like slow it down. It's that nighttime routine. You're already in that sort of sense of togetherness, versus working on something in the morning when it's like, whoa, go, 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 go. So again, it's a very individualized thing. I know I'm putting my kids to work, with a lot of heavy work. So like heavy work, that's a thing that a lot of parents, heard about, maybe when their kids were, really young, and you had people like me coming into, and, at some point in time, people just kind of stopped with the heavy work activities. Like, yeah, yeah, like we're past that. Heavy work is one of the safest, easiest things that you can do. And if you even think about yourself, like, how do most people calm themselves, even like as grown-ups? People like to do things like kickboxing or yoga. Like, those are all essentially organizing heavy work activities. So, if you're doing your like daily, your weekly trip to the grocery store or whatever, maybe there's one of those bags that you can save for your kid to be the one to like kind of help, take the groceries in. Or, in the case of my son, he helps, put the groceries away. And, he has to really kind of think through, okay, you know, where is this going to fit, or where does this go, with everything else, and, he has to kind of like look to me for some guidance for that, but also try to like kind of problem solve. And, problem solving is important. So, that there's a lot of visual perception, right? Like just in that. I think the other thing is like even thinking about cooking, for example, and again, when I bring up these things, I I'm not thinking about people who are, essential workers on the front lines, or, trying to balance out their work jobs right now and are just trying to survive. If cooking is not something that you feel like you have the time for with your kid, that's okay. That's totally fine. you know, it's more, thinking about if that is an option for you or not, and then thinking about what opportunities there are, in working with your child for, fine motor planning, problem solving, even executive functioning. Like, here's a picture of what this is supposed to look like. And now we got to think about, okay, so this is what it's supposed to look like. How do we get there? What are the ingredients? And then bring in the handwriting piece. Maybe you need to write stuff down.
I liked your idea on your list, and which, by the way, I will send it out. I like the list with laundry and matching up socks, and my wheels are already turning, because I have this perpetual basket of clean laundry in my living room that needs to be folded.
Right.
And I sit down at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, and I'm like, I'm too tired again to do it. And it never gets done. But I think, well, I don't know why I think that I'm the only one who can do it. Because yeah, they can help with that. And, almost tricking them because the TV's on, or, they think they're just watching TV. And they don't realize that they're also helping me fold laundry.
or sorting darks and whites. That's another thing, so maybe, for one child, maybe the folding is not going to be it. Maybe that's going to be too complicated. Maybe they're sorting out the pants from the shirts. Maybe they're sorting out the darks from the whites. Maybe it's about the socks, right? But like you have to think about, okay, what's something here that's going to work for my child?
Yeah. Um, yeah. And because we're all home for every meal every day, I don't use paper towels or napkins. I only use cloth things. Um, but I'm perpetually washing these rags because I don't use paper towels. But I don't care how they're folded because they're just rags. So that would be something that would be so easy for him to fold in half. Not so easy for him, but I don't care if he folds it in half or in quarters. But my husband doesn't have to wear it to work the next day or whenever we go back. So if it's wrinkled, it won't matter. So I'm excited to try those.
Yeah.
I liked also your idea about the handwriting. I think every kid has their thing that they don't want to do, and for mine, it's reading and writing.
Yeah, it
Um,
can be hard.
right. It's hard for him, and he doesn't like doing it. But I like the thanking the healthcare workers. Of course, we have Mother's Day coming up, so they could send a card or hand. It's going to have to be a handmade card because I'm not going to the store. For grandparents, grandmothers. That's I think a great idea. What was some of the other
I was
ones?
also talking about the idea of like writing a letter to a friend or maybe writing a letter to a teacher. I think people at this point are a little more comfortable with the mail thing. So it's like, if you write a letter and mail
Yeah.
it, send it out. Just, something functional. It's functional, it's meaningful. And when you're doing it too, there's a few different tricks, if you're trying to work on the actual handwriting piece. One of the things that I suggest to everyone is to get wiki sticks. You know what those are, Lisa?
The waxy things.
Yeah, like the little color wax. They're great for, if you need those like kind of raised up, something that's like raised up to work on like orientation of lines. So you could just put them down on the paper and then it kind of helps you to like orient, to the line. They're also great for just anything. Like if, you're trying to like form letters, and you can make like an A or a B out of them. You can also put them down on the paper and they stick. So like say you're working on coloring, right? And then you put it down and you color and it's like a whole like raised line thing, but it doesn't like stay there. Then you just pick it up when you're done.
Oh. All right, we have a question from Kim.
Yes.
See, her son received OT for 4 years, but in 6th grade no longer. School could not do any more for him. He still has some visual spatial issues and physical coordination issue that reemerges in subtle ways. How he holds a cooking spoon. He could not use a manual can opener last week. He has difficulty cutting. Lately he's been running into the wall when turning the corner. I try not to instruct him or nag him unless absolutely necessary. Will he eventually gain these skills on his own, or should I set up situations to work on these?
So I think that, like I said before, if it's logistically feasible for you to try to set up some situations to work on the skills, and to do so in a way that it feels like he can be successful. So, like, it could be like the manual can opener thing, for example. Like, it could be that that's just going to be too difficult for him. But if you think about it, if say you do most of the can opening and the can's almost open, and then he has to help you just squeeze that last part of it, right? So it's like that idea of backwards shading that you just do the last part first. So that might make him feel more successful than trying to do it from the beginning and having zero success and then just giving up. If you do it with that little end part, then like there's that success there. Like, oh, we opened it, and he can also see that like he can watch you do kind of like the rest of it. Um, so it's that whole idea of how to set up a situation, but do so so that he's got that little bit of a challenge He's got some support and guidance from you, but there's also that possibility of success there. And again, when in doubt, try to always go with having them do that little last piece of the activity to
Yeah.
help them be successful. And I think with like running into the wall when turning the corner, I just kind of want to know, like, I guess kind of like, where do you think he's going, so to speak? Like, has this been like kind of a general kind of problem, or is it like, I don't know if it's a situation where you can kind of talk to him about it and be like, I noticed that you when you're like turning the corner, you tend to like run and kind of bump into things. What's up? You know, and make him, think about, oh gosh, yeah, I guess I was in a rush. That might or may not be the case. I don't know your child, but if it is, then you're kind of putting it out there for the child to think about, like, wow, why is it that whenever I do that, is it that I'm not looking? Am I not using my peripheral vision? Like, what is it?
Yeah. And I think you have to know your child and um how I'm trying to think of how it was explained to me with my son
Hmm.
because like the ability to first of all do the inherent learning, which is when you're learning from social cues and things around you, that kind of like a natural progression, or does your child need to be direct taught everything? um so that's something you're going to have to, again, only you know your child, but I know when it comes to my son and feeding himself, it does not bother him to have food on his shirt. Like, that does not bother him at all. It does not bother him to have food on his face, nor will he ever pick up on the social cues as far as it's not really socially acceptable to have food on your face or food on your shirt. So he is going, like, he has to be direct taught that. That's not something that he's going to learn just from kind of doing it. I'm trying to think of how she explained it to me. I don't know if no. I'm I was trying to relate it to her, like when she said, well, is he going to get it back or is he going to have to be direct taught?
Some right. I mean, and it's just one of the things that, and this can just be one of the heavier burdens. Sometimes it feels like that when you have a child with a disability, that it just feels like there's so many things where that's the case, where they don't intuitively learn. And so they do need that extra repetition, or they do need, things to just be, and I think it can be hard. It'd be hard for us, it can be hard for the child. And I
Right.
do think, it can wear people down.
Yeah.
And at the same time, um, I think to a certain extent, yeah, I think there are things that, but there are also ways to, like, for example, like with your son, like one of the things I would almost want to know is, like, if you were to take a picture of him with the food all over his face, and then take a picture of him like with the food not on his face, and then show it to him, and then have like a mirror while he's eating, would he start to recognize?
Right. It's
So
yeah.
yeah, so there are ways.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
my typical, and for what it's worth, my typical child, I've been trying to teach him to cook over this pandemic shutdown, and I got out our can opener and he asked me what it was. So please do not
Right.
feel bad if your kid cannot use
Yeah.
a can opener. And in fact, it took me because we just do it. I've had 40 more years of experience than he has, and it really, they can be hard to turn even for an
Yeah.
adult.
Yeah. So that's
So,
something that I wouldn't call that. OTs always want to call, they call it like the just right challenge. So we want to look for a challenge that's manageable, and not a challenge that's like insurmountable.
yeah. Okay, Tracy says, oh, it's a sensory question. Any info on helping with Zoom meetings? Her son refuses Zoom video. Is it related to sensory issues? And most teachers are, of course, requiring them.
So, okay, Zoom meetings. So I'm not sure how many people on here have seen some of the pieces that have come out recently in like some magazines about, like, some different articles about Zoom meetings and how exhausting they are for everyone, right? Like, this is definitely one of those situations where I want you to like just kind of put on your, like, we as humans all have sensory needs thing, and like think about the things about Zoom meetings that make them challenging for you as a grown up, even. And then when you multiply that by how many meetings you are attending, and it's hard because some schools are a lot more flexible than others. So, like, my kids only have usually two, maybe three of these a day, but it is
Okay.
definitely not like it depends. Like, it might be one of them might be like core, and they're optional,
Okay.
and they can keep their video off. So I think there's a whole bunch of factors. One of them I think is definitely that from a visual perceptual standpoint, it can be hard to, like, are you, focusing on the person versus you're just focusing on the teacher, trying to maybe eliminate a situation where you have to look at all the boxes, which I think could be hard, right? Like, for a lot of people. So part of it is like with Zoom, if there's a way to even just focus on the person who's talking, which should be like one of the options. Some kids, that's just like an easier thing, especially on a Zoom call with the teacher, where it's like mostly just kind of focusing on the teacher. A lot of people, especially kids, they get distracted by seeing their own video on the call. So that's another factor, I would say, like, just seeing if they can either, and with Zoom there should be a way to do that where you can only just, you don't see your own video, the other person might see it, or they might. um but they can also, you could also ask about, does my child have to be on the camera or not? And if they don't need to be on the camera, that also can, like, just ease a little bit of pressure on them. But the main issue is, how many Zoom meetings are we talking about? How many in a row? Like, you know, because I think some schools it's like way too much, where it really is all day long. And it should not be all day long.
No. And I think if it's not unreasonable to ask for accommodations if your child was distracted easily in a regular classroom. I don't know why you wouldn't think that they wouldn't be distracted with 20 faces now. Sometimes I
Yeah.
think in the classroom, if there's stuff going on behind you, you might be able to turn that off. But now it's all right in your line of vision.
It's so
Um,
hard. And like I said, it's hard for adults. Now we have to think about how hard it is for
oh, and I know with my fifth grader, like they're bringing their dogs in, and the teacher had to shut that down. And like,
kids.
there's
Right. I know.
it's like a whole thing. Like, of course you can't concentrate. Like, so and so is trying to show you a dog, and
Mhm.
yeah. So I mean, I think
Yeah.
just ask for whatever accommodations you might need, and I think Jamie's giving you some great ideas as far as knowing, what the issue is. If it's focus, if it's attention, if it's the longevity and how many a day, and things like that.
And if your child is capable of telling you what it is that's bothering them, please ask them. It's always important to try to get your child's eye view, as I call it,
Yeah.
because that is always going to be, if it's possible, the best way to do problem solving. I happen to be a big fan of Dr. Ross Green, and I do like to, like, kind of apply that to a lot of things. But yes, and motor breaks are huge. Another thing that and I when you see the form afterwards, at least I'll give you, like, some of my strategies that I wrote up. Talked about just environmental setup. If you do have your child at a desk with a chair and a table, it's a chair and a desk. I'm getting tired. I'm like, I can't even.
Speaking of
So
too many Zooms.
yeah, somebody says so. Very important to make sure your child's feet are on the ground and not dangling. Anytime your feet are dangling, it's going to make it more difficult for you to focus. And generally speaking, like, you can't assume that all chairs and, fit people well. Especially, just random chairs that you may have at home. So just something important to think about. Um, is your table at, or your desk at, like, basically about elbow height? Or is it higher? Is it lower? Is that comfortable? How far away is the computer? Is the chair comfortable, or is it a little too deep? So all of those factors are also really important. And in addition to like also, which way is your child facing? Are they facing things that are distracting for them or not? So, you know, thinking about the environment, is another, just really important thing, with like what does that environmental setup look like? So if you're having any struggles with your child over, learning, just trying to kind of get a sense of what it might be.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to handwriting. Erica and is it Kayleen or Colleen or Colin? They're kind of related. Son's been working with OT on his writing, but he struggles with letters that dig down, such as G, J, Y, P, and Q, also spacing. So she's looking for that. And then someone else, so you can wrap it all in. Her son writes too lightly. How can she get him to write better? Because he writes too lightly.
Okay. So let's see. So in terms of, I actually have like my little handy dandy locker mirror, which is that there's a screen. So um, if you don't already have like handwriting without tears or one of those things at home, this is just something you can do. Like you can go to like your local pharmacy or whatever store and just get one of these and just some dry erase markers. I put like a little smiley up here. When it comes to this stuff, don't feel like you have to practice it on lined paper. Like definitely I'd be more inclined to go with something like this, which is going to be a lot more fun. And then, really, I can't really do this. Okay. So like, if you've got like, let's see, and I know it's backwards, just kind of even having them do that one part first, and then maybe like switching to, okay, now I'm going to do my line down with like a different color. And then I'm going to pull in like a different color for the last part. So what you're doing is you're just sort of like breaking it down, if that makes sense. Um, so that's just my like kind of 3-second idea for working on those like kind of loop things, is to just take the paper out of the equation completely and try to use color coding as a way to break it down. And who doesn't like writing on mirrors, right? So,
Right.
okay. The other question was,
Um, oh, he writes lightly.
oh, lightly. Okay. So, depending on what he is using, I would look at, does he tend to write more lightly with like a certain pencil or pen or crayon marker? I would even have him like kind of try out each of them in turn and see if he can tell you, wow, like does that look lighter or like, because a lot of kids, it's like proprioceptive thing. They just don't have the sense of how much pressure they're using. A lot of OTs will have kids who write lightly sometimes practice with, or like who they don't know how to use the right amount of pressure. They'll practice with some of the mechanical pencils to get a sense of like just how much do I have to do until it, kind of breaks. I think also just giving them some more resistive activities to do so that they just get a little more sense of like their body and like how much force they need to use. The other thing you can do is I think taking the like again like the sitting down at a table thing out of the equation and maybe putting some paper up on like the refrigerator and having them right up against a vertical surface. That gives you a lot more feedback.
Yeah. And I mean, I know none of us can really go out to stores right now, or it's not something you want to do
Yeah.
for, something like that. But look around your house and see what you have from, I'm surprised at the things that my kids get like for Christmas that I kind of throw off to the side. And I think, oh,
Yeah.
we'll never, like somebody got Kevin bathroom or bathtub crayons. And I thought, well, he's too old for that. But actually, bathtub crayons is just exactly what you just said, in that in the shower, he can write, he can practice writing and it's on a vertical
Hmm.
surface and I don't
Yep.
have to clean it up. It's all
And
right
it's
there.
different, fun, like, yeah.
Yeah.
There are a lot of items around your house. And I did have kind of like a list of them that are going to be useful to just even like if you see just go around your house, and if you see something random and you think, wow, maybe that would be helpful for like this OT stuff, kind of get it together in like maybe one location, try to put it in a bag, or like with smaller stuff, put it in a shoebox, and then have that stuff nearby when your child has an OT session. So that the other key thing is that, as we're all trying to adjust to this like brave and scary new world, occupational therapists are also trying to deal with this teletherapy thing for the first time. And one of the struggles I am hearing kind of out there in OT land is, it's hard when they don't always know what materials people have in the home, or if like kind of, just making sure that, when your child has a session that they have like the materials that they can, kind of use. Because if that isn't the case, then the OTs end up kind of doing more computer related stuff because they don't have the opportunity to work with their child there and then on like hand skills, like on hand strengthening or on dexterity. But if you, and especially if you can coordinate with the OT so that you have, you say, oh gosh, I found these like, tweezers or, like clothespins or whatever, around the house, and I'm going to put them in this box so that when you do your session with my kid, they'll have it. Then the OTs will be like, cool. Okay. So now when I'm planning, I can think to myself, I know that they're going to have those clothespins. So like, let's do something with that.
Right. Right. Let's see. Someone else mentioned taking motor breaks, of course. And I think, as Jamie has said, talk with your child's teacher and talk with their therapist. No, I just did an interview with a teacher back before the pandemic, and she said, no teacher gives assignments or homework assignments with the intent of stealing your family time and making you cry and making your child cry. That's not the purpose behind any of this. So, they're not having these Zoom classes and doing these Zoom sessions with the intent of making your child miserable and stressing you out and all that. So don't be afraid to reach out to them and, hey, we want this to be successful. What are some ideas? When you mentioned about the dangling feet, my son has a home Riften chair, which of course not everybody can just run out right now and get a Riften chair. But while we were waiting for it to come in, some shoes come in like a bigger box than like a shoe box. Like, how like some of your Nikes or your hiking boots come in like a thicker box.
Yep.
You might want to try that if they are going to sit in, say, a typical chair to, because they're little, their feet don't hit the floor.
No, there's definitely different like boxes or surfaces that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what else we use to keep him. Because she told us it worked. He doesn't have the core strength either to.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of it's something that we kind of take for granted. We don't realize how much core strength it takes to sit there with your feet dangling. And if you don't have it, it's very distracting.
Yeah. It's another thing to just think about, as much as possible, having to eliminate for your child them having to hold up their body against gravity, because that is just another way of tiring their body out. So, again, is there, if they're sitting on their bed, do they get to like lean up against the wall? Like, do they have some sort of surface for support? Because between that and the fact that our eyes are just getting exhausted by the Zoom calls, it's kind of no wonder that, it's like, oh my God, I can't focus on my teacher's voice, or I can't focus on what they're saying because my body is doing this. I'm trying to hold myself up, and I'm trying to not, my eyes are blurring and all that stuff.
Right. And I know that schools in particular tend to get a little uncomfortable when you talk about recording anything. But Zooms or whatever modality your school is using to have these classes are really set up like it's so easy to record whatever it is, whether it be a class or, a therapy session. You may want to approach them about that and let them know that you're interested in recording it, because it twofold. One is that if your child fatigues 20 minutes into the 30-minute session, you can keep it going. But also for the kids who have to relearn and be retaught and review, you have the recording of that class and they can watch
Yes.
it. They can watch it as many times as they need to.
Yeah. At my own district, it's funny you say this because literally like an hour ago, I got an email from my own district that said that they wants to talk to parents about doing the recordings of these for exactly those reasons.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I get it. I mean, you're putting cameras into the homes of every single kid in the district. And now you're talking about somebody who wants to record them. So I get it, like why people are uneasy about it, but it's an accommodation it's so simple that let's figure out a way to make it work, because again, for the kids who need to rewatch it, what easier way? It's just like kind of like built-in tutoring. Just listen to it again and again, or watch it again and again.
And by the same token, what I would say to parents is, because this is such a normal and natural part of birth to 3 early intervention, and yet it doesn't really happen in any other modality anymore. So I always have families sending me videos like all the time. So if there's something that they're doing with their child or something, great that they want to show me, or some moment, and that's part of our progress monitoring is I get those videos. And so, taking a video, or if there's something that you would like to be able to show the other therapist about, like, look, look what we did, or like we were working, or even like, what, I was working on this can opener thing with him and it didn't work, like I wanted to show you, and trying to like actually show them. The therapist can then actually even just watch and give feedback, or, just be like, that was great. And it also helps them to have some more tangible feedback about something that's working for the child.
Right. And by the same token, if it's, I don't want to dwell on the negative, but if it's something that's not working, that is, say in your child's baselines or in your child's present levels, that says, that your child can do this, and you've repeatedly asked them to do it and they're unable to do it, take a video of whether it's reading a passage or, writing their name or whatever that task or skill is. And you have the video and say, what am I doing wrong here? Because I've asked him to do this, and your data says he can do it. I can't. I'm not seeing it.
Or taking picture or video of the environment too. Like, so if you're not sure about the table and chair thing, for example, if it's working for them, take a picture and send it to the therapist. They should be able to.
Yeah. And I found my son's team has over the past decade plus been great. But they just you guys just come up with these ideas off the top of your heads like nothing. Like I honestly
it's after a while, but it's a pretty cool thing, I guess.
It is, because I actually went up to pick up some PT equipment from my son's PT on Saturday at Devereaux, and I just mentioned a couple of things, and she's like, oh, well, if you do this and take the sofa cushions off the sofa and then do this and then do this. And it's like she had the whole thing set up, and I was like, okay. You know what I mean? It didn't even tax her brain at all. She already I could just literally see the wheels turning, and she had solutions for me. And she's like, well, what kind of couch do you have? Do the cushions come off, and are they square, or are they, and she had it all set up for us.
So. Inside of your school-based occupational therapist and physical therapist is someone who has the same mindset as the people who saw your kids for early intervention when they were really little.
Right.
And you just have to be willing to think about how to tap into that.
Right. All right. Before we sign off or take any last questions, let's see if there's anything we missed. Let's see.
Oh, Kim posted the article. Oops. Thank you, Kim. Yes.
Oh, yes. Good.
And actually, that article literally quotes a high school classmate of mine.
Oh, does it?
Pretty neat. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. That's a really good article.
Okay, I will send out Jamie's list that she sent me, and I just looked, and don't be alarmed. I won't tell you how many pages it is. No, it's 3 pages, but it's bullet points. It's easy reading. It's stuff that you guys can implement at home. I'm actually pretty excited about it. I was feeling pretty flat this week because I was like, oh, is this week 8? Are we ending week 8 or starting week 8? Whatever it is.
I don't know.
But yeah, I was feeling pretty flat, and now I'm like, oh, that's right. 0 to 3, we used to do this and we used to do that. So I'm kind of excited about implementing some of these things again. So if there are any last words you want to say, or just any final thoughts, not last words.
I think be easy on yourself. Don't do anything unless it's going to work for you, the child, anyone else in your house. And just really, again, just focus your priorities and check in with your child's therapist and see how they can use their expertise on your child to help you, the expert on your child.
Great. Okay. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. As usual, it's my plan within 24 to 48 hours. I kind of gather all the resources that we talked about, and I put it in a blog post with the video and a transcript and send it all out so that you all can revisit what you need to revisit. So thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Lisa, for having me.
Yep.
Pleasure.